And then I saw her face, and I'm a believer, and not a trace of doubt in my mind. I'm in love.
Hey guys, COHT here, and I am back with another reaction video. And today I'm going to be reacting to another grimdark MLP fanfic reading by TheLostNarrator, and this one is called Rocket to Insanity. So, yeah, in case you guys don't remember, or to those of you who are new to my channel, I did do a reaction to the audio fic video by Vanamelon. It was like back in 2015. If you guys want to check it out, there will be a link in the description down below. And I believe that this video is going to have like the whole story. So, let's jump it in!
Warning. The following reading contains subject matter that some listeners might find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised.
Whoa, that is a cool intro. Deceiving tales from a lost mind. Wait, doesn't Rocket to Insanity take place in cupcakes? Oh, it's a nightmare.
Screams echoed throughout the cloud palace of Rainbow Dash's home. The filly startled wide awake in a cold sweat, terror surging through her veins. Nightmares, again, for the 7th time this month. And it was always the same one. The one with the cupcakes. Flashes of memory lanced through her head, wings being hacked off, then ripped from their sockets. Needles plunged into her beating heart. Adrenaline injected into her body to keep her wide awake and alert to the torture. The smell of her own flesh cooking, the sight of her own blood and gore spilling from her surgically incised belly. The mastermind behind her terror toying with those glistening organs like they were party favors. She knew in her heart that Pinkie Pie would never be capable of doing such a gruesome act. But that thought didn't help make the dreams any less vivid. The Pegasus pony sobbed openly, curling up in her blanket and rocking back and forth as her body trembled with fear. She hadn't told any pony about the dreams or the lingering feeling of steel-piercing flesh and blade-cutting bone. Over time, her work suffered because of the constant night terrors. They were so powerful that she was simply afraid of going back to sleep. Ponies wondered why she spent most of her days napping, in the open and in daylight. She could only rest in the shining brilliance of the sun, far from the shadows that haunted the darkness in her own mind. But even then, the black clutches of her fear-addled subconscious had begun to creep into that relative safety. Dash whimpered as tears streaked down her face, staining the fur on her cheeks as wide eyes darted around the darkened scenery of her room, and her breath came before hiccuping sobs. Her wings clung tightly against her form as paranoia began to clutch the edges of her mind. Shadows lurched and moved in her peripheral vision, routine natural noises becoming distorted and echoing within her mind as adrenaline surged through her shivering form. This wasn't healthy.
Yeah,
Her
not healthy
mind
at all.
was slowly breaking under the horrors of her own subconscious mind. Things that no pony should ever even have the slightest thought about, chipping away at her psyche. She was starting to crack.
Rainbow Dash? Rainbow Dash!
Alright, and we
Hey,
got,
has any pony seen Rainbow Dash around?
Applejack.
Trotted through the streets of Ponyville, looking high and low for the town's resident speedster pony. Bypassers just shook their heads and shrugged.
Oh, horse feathers. Figures that pony's nowhere to be seen when you really need her.
The cow pony grumbled and continued on through town, hoofbeats kicking up dust as she looked into the sky for the Pegasus pony.
Consarn it! Rainbow Dash, where in the wide world of Equestria are you?
A long yawn from the branches of the tree behind her met her answer. The pony in question dipping a head down and gazing at Applejack from an upside-down position.
What? Applejack? What is so important that you had to go and interrupt my napping?
The western pony stamped a hoof on the ground, scowling at the Pegasus.
Now you know just why I'm making a fuss and finding you. You said you were gonna bring a little rainstorm over the crops at Sweet Apple Acres nearly 2 hours ago. Instead, I find you out here, in this tree, snoozing your little behind off.
Dash gave a groan, slipping out of the tree and landing on her hooves, shaking her head. She appeared more disheveled than usual, her mane a mess, dark bags under her eyes from many sleepless nights. She looked pale, sickly almost, yet still tried to put on an air of cheeriness.
Yeah, keep your saddle on. I'll get it right now. Sorry and stuff.
As the Pegasus pony turned
Huh,
and spread her
tired
wings
much?
to take off, Applejack tilted her head to the side and gave a small frown.
Dash, are you feeling okay? You look a little under the weather.
Dash grumped,
I wouldn't say
shrugging
she's,
her
like, sick.
shoulders as she gave her wings a little test flap.
I'm fine.
Was the only response from the Pegasus. The cow pony behind her stepped forward, giving Dash's side a little nudge with her snout.
You sure about that?
Don't touch me. I'm fine. Honest, I just...
She nearly spilled the beans right then and there, but refrained. She couldn't take the chance that the other pony might think different of her, because she was being so scared out of her mind every night by some stupid nightmare. Her body gave a little shiver as Applejack looked on with concern.
Gotta go!
Before Applejack could say anything further, Dash was off like a rocket towards Sweet Apple Acres.
Yeah,
leaving
you
the
just
cow
have to
pony
rush.
to scratch her head in confusion.
That girl just ain't right.
And back to the crying.
Another terror-filled night. Dash laid curled upon the floor of her cloud home, blankets around her shivering form. It was worse this time. She'd been filleted open, set upon the dining table of the pink earth pony, as slabs of her own meat, dripping with her life fluids, were sheared from her flank, served to all of her friends, herself still somehow alive enough to be aware of the entire situation, hearing the laughter as they devoured her life form, as fork and knife dug into her innards, tearing her apart. She was nothing more than a slab of meat for her friends' enjoyment. Hiccups
Meat?
punctured through heavy sobs as the Pegasus pony clutched
Like,
at her head. The
that'd be
visions of her
punishment meat?
nightmares had begun to engrave themselves into her memory. Every horrible detail, from the fiery pain of rent flesh to the sickening sound of innards being torn and ripped from her belly. She whined as she laid curled tightly upon the floor, sniffling as her tears gushed from her eyes.
Just leave me alone. Why won't you just leave me alone?
She hiccuped, rocking back and forth.
I don't deserve this. Just stay out. Just get out of my head, please. Just stay out of my head.
Fear turned to anger, Dash beating her hooves against her temples.
Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out.
Dash is having a mental breakdown.
Get out.
She wept openly now, grinding her forehead against the floor of her room, her hooves pounding and pounding at her head, bruising the flesh, as pent-up frustration and sleep deprivation erupted in an agonizing scream of rage and sorrow. Another night,
Well then.
another crack in the window. Every pony had noticed. It was in the way she walked, the way she talked. Her body language said it all. Gone was Rainbow Dash, that cheerful, brash speedster. She was replaced by some hollow shell. She drifted aimlessly over Ponyville as weeks of interrupted sleep had taken its toll upon her. All of her friends knew that something was up, but none of them knew exactly what to do. She had pushed them away, lashing out like a wounded animal every time they tried to console her and plead for her to get help. Too headstrong, some would say. Too proud, others still. But none of them realized the gravity of the situation until that one fateful day. The day that Rainbow Dash finally snapped. It had been an unseasonable warm spring day in Ponyville, as every pony went about their business. Lyra and Bon Bon chatting it up beneath their usual table at the cafe. Applejack selling the first harvest from Sweet Apple Acres, as ponies lined up for those ruby delectables. And within Sugar Cube Corner, Pinkie Pie was busy darting to and fro in the kitchen, baking up a storm. She glanced at the clock every now and then, frowning each time, before the bell to the door finally rang. A haggard-looking Rainbow Dash entering the shop.
Rainbow! You're finally here! Oh, I've been so worried about you!
Oh yeah, this is the part in the audio fic video.
Come visit me so I could make you feel extra super special and cheer you up. But then you didn't show up when I thought you were going to, and I was all sad that you were going to stay cooped up in your house all day. But then you came, and now you're here, and now we can have some fun!
Dash merely looked at her blankly, before shaking her head and stumbling forward.
Whatever, Pinkie. What do you want me here for?
The energetic Earth Pony bounced about the kitchen, over towards one of the many ovens of Sugar Cube Corner, before pulling the door down, reaching in and pulling out a tray of puffy, fluffy cupcakes. She spun around, grinning widely as she showed the baked goods to Dash.
I made you cupcakes!
Dash paled. Her mind flashed back to the earliest of those nightmares, the most vivid,
Oh yeah.
the most intense. A tray of
I think I remember in that one video by WatchPony.com.
Rapidly deteriorating.
Pinkie Pie gives Rainbow Dash a cupcake, and then Rainbow Dash kills Pinkie
down under the effects of some
because she
unknown
thinks
drug.
that
Pinkie
the
Pie
cupcake
leaned
is
over
deadly.
her with that trademark grin, eyes gleaming as the world dimmed around her.
Now you take a nap.
Dash's vision became
Yep,
haze
cupcakes.
as the world began to spin around her. She stumbled back, shaking her head and whispering under her breath.
No, 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 no!
She backed up, eyes wide with fear as she shook her head violently, looking around frantically for an easy way out, or any way out. The window, the door.
No, I don't want him. I'm not gonna let you. Let me out of here. Let me out of here.
Pinkie merely tilted her head to the side quizzically. She set the tray down and lifted a few cakes out and plated them. She bounced over to the shivering Rainbow Dash and offered the plate to the Pegasus. Dash stared at them. They were the same color, the same kind.
Run!
A voice in her head said.
Run, you idiot! Run!
A hoof flashed out, smacking the plate out of Pinkie's hooves.
I said I don't want him! I know what you're trying to do! It's not going to work!
Pinkie Pie frowned at the discarded cupcakes, but in typical Pinkie Pie fashion, she just shrugged and went about cleaning them up.
Maybe you don't like avocado icing?
Avocado icing?
I made plenty more so we can make some to your liking. Is that okay,
That
Dashi?
does not
She glanced
taste
back,
good.
the Pegasus letting out panicked whimpering noises, eyes fixated on the pony before her, her eyes nearly pinpricks, as fear and adrenaline coursed through her veins. She was pinned between Pinkie and the wall behind her, chest heaving with heavy gasps. Horror filled her mind, playing the scenes from her nightmares over and over again, of the saw rending off flesh, cutting through bone.
Say, Dash, why do they call it a hacksaw? It doesn't hack. Hacking is what I was doing with the knife.
the scalpel piercing her breast, dragging through her flesh down her groin, filleting her open like some sick sort of piñata.
In a few minutes, you won't be able to feel anything below your rib cage. Then you'll be able to stay awake and watch the harvest.
Move! Just get away! Get away!
She was hyperventilating by now, no longer seeing the longtime friend, but a horrific, sadistic butcher.
Aww, I thought you would have lasted longer. Oh well, it was really nice knowing you, Dash.
Do something!
And then she saw it, that shining sharp protector just sitting there on the table next to her. A voice within her mind whispered to her like a seductive lover, sounding so wrong, but so right at the same time. Kill her. Dash hesitated. Part of her wanted to scream, another to run, but yet another considering the actual request.
Kill her before she kills you!
Her mind was a maelstrom of conflicting thoughts. The Pegasus felt sick to her stomach, the beat of her own heart pounding within her head.
Take the knife.
She stared
take the
at
knife and shove it in her
slowly
stomach.
stretching out, trembling as parts of her still warred, still tried to reason.
Take it. Take the knife.
Tears streamed down her face, but her hoof hovered over the handle of the tool-turned weapon, as if the last frayed strands of her sanity knew what was happening, knew that it was a fighting battle it was going to lose.
Take it!
She snatched it, holding it in front of her at Pinkie Pie with shaky hooves. Her ears splayed back against her head.
Just leave me alone. Please, Pinkie Pie. Just leave me alone.
Pinkie Pie looked at the knife being yielded by her friend for the moment, before giggling and bouncing over towards Dash, whose heart sank as the filly rapidly approached.
Oh, Dashy, you silly filly. You got me good with that one. Never one to turn down an opportunity to prank, huh?
She didn't think. Her body was
Yep, she's
acting
being
on
stabbed.
its own. A gasp. Pinkie Pie looking thunderstruck as Dash heaved, frozen in mid-strike. Pinkie Pie brought a hoof up to her cheek, dabbing at a wide cut, looking at her own blood-stained hoof.
Dash? I told you. I told you to stay away. Why couldn't you just stay away?
Kill her.
No. She's my friend. I can't.
Kill her. And the hurting will stop.
Please, Pinkie, just run. Oh God, please, don't make me do this.
Kill her. Kill her. Kill her. Kill her. Kill her. Kill her. Kill her.
And here it comes.
Kill her.
Kill her.
What happened next was a
Oh!
the memories fuzzy in Dash's mind. As Pinkie tried to make sense of what was happening, Dash let out a chilled mix between a wail and a scream, catching the earth pony off guard as the blade darted forward, slashing through her neck, severing vein and artery as the gout of crimson issued forth from the wound. Shock and surprise registered on Pinkie Pie's face as she gurgled, blood hemorrhaging from that wound, staining her pink fur with the red hue of her life essence. Again and again that blade struck out, Dash's speed not restricted to her flight as she plunged the blade into the filly with increasingly rapid pace, sobbing hysterically as she carved the squirming and flaying filly up, through breast, through bone. Pinkie Pie's struggles slowly faded as her blood was spilled onto the floor of Sugar Cube Corner's kitchen,
Jeez.
pooling around her, splattering
Okay,
the
still
Pegasus
stabbing.
atop her.
Okay,
with the
please,
hot
make an end,
red
make an end.
fluid.
Just leave me alone.
She screamed, fear turning into rage.
You couldn't just go away, could you? You just had to keep coming back.
Pinkie's eyes were wide with terror as tears streamed down her face. visage frozen in a mix of fear and anguish. As those slowly glazing eyes stared up at Dash, the strikes of the blade grew slower until the Pegasus finally plunged the implement deep into Pinky's chest, spearing through the filly's heart and ending her party once and for all. Dash heaved for breath, limbs shaking as she looked down at her handiwork. Blood stained her fur and feathers, painting her a deep crimson, wearing the life force of her former friend like some sick outfit. She sobbed, letting out a wail of anguish as she realized the gravity of what she had just done. Her hooves wrapped around the butchered filly, holding tightly at the still warm corpse of her friend.
No! No, no, no! No! I didn't! Sweet Celestia, no! What have we done? What did I do?
Dash's body shook as her chest heaved with each gut-wrenching cry of anguish. She let go of Pinky's body and let out an ear-piercing shriek of terror as she looked down at her own hooves. Blood and viscera coated them, dripping down through the fur. The scene straight out of a horror movie laid before her eyes. She skittered backwards, slipping in the pool of blood of her own creation, slamming cheek first into the pile of gore, before finally gaining purchase and dragging herself over to the farthest wall from Pinky's still form, her stomach retching in her as she emptied its contents upon the floor next to her. Her mind raced, thoughts running a mile a minute. Wide, terror-filled eyes stared at the scene made by her own hoof. Murder. She had just committed murder.
Yeah,
She had
murder.
mercilessly slaughtered one of her dearest friends. It was unheard of. No pony had murdered another in hundreds of years. Voices within her mind clawed and whispered to her.
She's dead. She's dead. What have you done? What have you done? You did this. You're a monster. Never forgive yourself. You did this. You're a monster. You're dead. You're a monster.
The world spinning around her as time seemed to stand still for her, the last vestiges of her sanity being plucked apart, one by one, until the final thread snapped. Hooves grasped at her head, matting her rainbow-colored mane down with blood. The Pegasus rocking back and forth in the bloodied kitchen as a crazed grin spread across her muzzle, humming disjointedly to
Okay, here comes some
herself.
laughing.
Giggle at the ghastly. Snortle at the spooky.
Dash threw her head back, curling legs against her chest as forelimbs wrapped around them, psychotic laughter issuing forth from the speedster Pegasus as her world shattered around her,
Jeez.
psyche in spirit, broken and splintered.
Yep, that was how that one audio fake video went. Yep. MLP Pony was the only guest voice actor in this. Ugh. Well then, so it starts off with Rainbow Dash having a dream. Yeah, a dream where it like took place in cupcakes. And of course, yeah, Rainbow Dash visits Pinkie Pie. And then there are voices in her head just telling her to kill her after, yeah, kill Pinkie Pie after Pinkie Pie gives her cupcakes. And then Rainbow Dash starts to go crazy. She just grabs a knife and just starts stabbing Pinkie just non-stop. And then she started laughing at the end. Yep, that's what I remember in that one audio fic video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need a snack to calm me down. Once again, guys, thanks for watching, and ahoy!